The following program is rated TVMA. This program may contain strong opinions, explicit language, and possible adult themes. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of the Smoke Free Radio Network or its affiliates. This program is meant for mature adult audience. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Vaping in the Mic. I'll tell you what, this week we've got a lot of stuff, we'll call it that we're going to end up talking about. There's been an awful lot of things that have happened in the news, an awful lot of things that have been going around. I mean, everybody that has been paying attention to some of the vaping industry has been able to see we have had some massive stuff happening from anywhere going from the FDA coming out with their new stuff and a bunch of other material coming around to who knows what else. I mean, we've had more bad news in just a few days that it cracks me up. But there's one thing that we're going to talk about this evening. And it's near and dear, and it's going to, the way that I would phrase it for you, it's going to arrive at your doorstep, and it is going to affect every vapor out there, whether you like it or not. And what I'm talking about are tariffs that have just been passed. This is just round one. There's going to be another round that's going to be coming up. And it's not looking pretty. I mean, it's not looking pretty at all. You take a look at some of the things that are going on, and it would remind you and say, we have some very, very serious issues that are happening. And it's like, okay, pretty at all. We're going to try to do as much as we possibly can not to have those. Yeah, Fig, it's tariffs, dude. It is not anything that anybody's going to like. I got so many screens going on right now, it's not even funny. So you're going to see me looking all over the place trying to figure things out. But tonight we have a very special guest, and I'm going to give him a call here in just a minute. This guy, everybody that is around knows this gentleman, but tonight we are going to be talking with a special guest, the president of the American Vaping Association, Mr. Gregory Conley. And I'll tell you what, it was a last-minute thing that I decided to turn around, and I had lined up a shop to talk with and had some other things, but then things happened earlier in the week, and I just got hold of Greg just like not even 36 hours ago. And graciously, he came along and he said, yes, he would be able to do this. So that's going to be a fantastic kind of thing. So we're going to give him just a quick call. And we're going to walk through that because I know there's something else that he really has a desire to talk about as well. So what I'm going to do is turn around, see if I can't make all of this happy stuff work in conjunction with each other all over again. And I love doing this because now I've got this one screen to my left, one screen in the middle of me, kind of to my right, the laptop all the way over to the other side. And I've got to just... I feel like I've got multiple attention disorder or something, and I feel bad. Let's see if we can get Greg on the phone. And we'll hope so. I'm a few minutes early giving him a call. I might have to give him a quick call back because I told him about 7:15, but it's a little early.
Hello?
Greg, Mike Peterson calling.
Yeah. Sorry, who?
Mike Peterson with Vaping and the Mic.
Oh, hey.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Greg Conley, the president of the American Vaping Association. Greg, honest to God, I appreciate you taking time, especially at the last minute, to turn around and take time to do this, because it was the last minute. What I just told people is I had turned around and other things set up, but then earlier in the week, and I saw the tariffs and everything going through, and I'm like, we need to get somebody here that can really talk about what is happening. There was something I think that Bill Tarling had posted in one of the Vape Distortion or something, but there was a quote I think that he put in there, or something that was mentioned by you, that this was round one, the tariff that is going to be hitting. Is that correct?
Well, I'll bring it back, since some listeners may not be familiar with the current trade war that the United States is engaged in. President Trump has plenty of problems to list off with the country of China, and he, as part of their plan to try to gain some concessions from the Chinese, instituted a first set of tariffs that went into effect about 1 month ago. And that first set of tariffs did not impact what are known as HTS codes, the HTS codes that include different types of vapor products. However, the second tranche of tariffs did include the HTS code that within the subheading includes electronic cigarette devices. Myself, Brittany Cushman from VTA, Guy Bentley from Reason, Kerry Wade from the R Street Institute, a couple others went to Washington, D.C. and testified against instituting that tariff. Unfortunately, only 5 of, I believe, 284 proposed tariffs actually were removed, and we weren't one of them. And so this is the first set of tariffs to impact the vaping industry, and the first set goes into effect on August 23rd.
Wow. Now, this set of tariff, if I've read things correctly, this one is hitting hardware. Is that correct?
Both tariffs would hit hardware, and I'll preface this answer by saying that I don't believe anyone, including within the U.S. government, truly has delved into the 2 HTS codes and really looked at the entire category of vapor products. Some would say that the electronic cigarette device category that's now subject to a 25% tariff starting August 23rd is for fully functional products that are imported into the U.S. So an e-cigarette device, a vaping device that the consumer purchases batteries for, purchases a tank for, and purchases atomizers for. I'm not sure if that is an e-cigarette device or not under the law, but a pod system where you buy it and the inside is the coil you need, inside is everything you need but the liquid, that would seem to be impacted. Now, eventually that distinction won't really matter, because later this month, early September, they are going to have hearings on the third tranche of Trump tariffs, and included in that is the HTS code that includes e-cigarette parts. So if it is not a device, then it's going to be a part. And I am working with some other organizations at the moment to try to make the case through a professional firm that this would do serious, severe economic harm, which is how you can get exemptions or get yourself out of the tariff list altogether. And hopeful that we'll be able to get something done to lower the serious detrimental impact this will have in the industry.
I was going to say, this strikes me as being something that is going to have serious impact for the smaller mom and pop shops, and I'm sure even for the larger people, because they'll be able, we know that some of this tax will be passed on directly to the consumer. Some mom and pop shops, or some people that deal on razor thin margin or razor thin kind of profit, may end up having to push the entire thing over to the consumer. But in your estimation, how much of an impact do you think this first round, or what is currently there, how much do you think that that's going to really hit all of the vaping industry?
Well, what I said in my tariff testimony was there was a really good Yale University study where I believe it was Yale, my apologies if it wasn't, where they surveyed smokers and presented them with cigarette prices increasing. And as we've seen in the literature time and time again, smokers readily accept increases in cigarette taxes, and to really spur quitting, you need significantly high taxes. Well, on the flip side, when you ask smokers about their interest in switching to vaping and you gave them a price, well, every 10% price hike in rechargeable e-cigarettes resulted in 19% less intention to switch or intention to try the vapor product.
Really?
So at the retail level, you likely will see any price increase, and it seems that definitely 12 to 15% at the retail level is what you'd anticipate at minimum, that you will see less smokers being willing to make the switch, because it's already, when you're asking someone that spends $7 a day on a pack of cigarettes to ask them to go spend $50 on a kit and $20 on their first bottle of liquid, that can already be tough.
Now, I'm going to ask, and I apologize if this veers off into something that it's that wonderful touchy subject of the Juul. Do you think that this is going to have the severe impact for that particular company as well?
It's going to have some sort of impact, but Juul has enough investor money that if this trade war only goes on for 3 or 6 months, they may be able to not raise costs at all. I'm not familiar enough with their balance books to be able to say one way or the other, but they certainly are importing their products from China, and they'll be feeling the heat from this tariff just like every other person who imports vape products and doesn't illegally use a different HTS code. Wow.
Now, once again, we're talking about, this is kind of, I don't want to say round one, but this is like the first part of the steps in tariffs. And as you mentioned, this goes into effect August 23rd. And a lot of people, I'm not sure that a lot of people actually understood that this was going to really happen. I know that I've spoken with some people that have been watching news, and they see Trump tariffs, but they never really associated that it would affect the vaping industry. Now, if this is kind of like the first step, if they actually enact more tariff, how crippling would that, or could it be, for the vaping industry?
Well, there was just a news story, to go off base from the question a little bit. As of now, our precious iPhones and such have not been hit by tariffs. But if there is a fourth tranche of tariffs to come, it is quite likely that the new iPhone, which was scheduled to be a bit cheaper than the normal one, would end up costing just as much as one does today. But there's no indication that Trump plans to take 25% and raise it to 35 or 50. But if this keeps going on, you never know, and that would be even more devastating because the response. Well, I'll go back. The response that I got when I tried to bring the tariff issue to the attention of some people in the industry from a slim minority was, "This is fake news. this tariff issue doesn't apply to e-cigarettes." Just because they opened up the tariff list and searched e-cigarette and it didn't pop up. But Reuters, Bloomberg, everyone has confirmed that indeed it does impact vaping products.
Wow.
So I'm hopeful it's not going to come to this. I'm hopeful that we can get reasonable exclusions, work with the U.S. Office of the Trade Representative and present them real data, which I think some sources will be collecting soon. So it is not all over, but it is certainly unlikely that anything will change between now and August 23rd at least.
I know that there is going to be some outrage about this, and it's something that you and I are going to touch on here in a minute. But would you say, or would you venture to say, that a lack of participation by some of the, I don't know, I'm just going to put this out here. I personally see a lot of apathy in the vaping industry. People just kind of sit on their thumbs. Would you say that a lack of participation or a lack of getting in there and making their voices heard has helped bring this about? Or could they have forestalled? Or would it have made a bigger difference if shops and everybody had banded together to get out and talk about this?
I can't predict what would have happened with the addition or absence of additional comments or outreach to the U.S. Trade Representative Office. I can say that it could not have hurt to have lots and lots of vape shops filing comments pointing out that 40%, 50% of their revenue comes from products imported from China that would potentially be impacted by this tariff. Certainly, the response, we don't know exactly how many flavor responses to the FDA ANPRM is, but that's definitely a docket where I wish, regardless of what the final number was, I wish it was 2 or 3 or 4 times larger.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people, like I said, it's irritating to me because I see so many people just taking a hands-off approach. And there are times that I wonder, just on this kind of a level, how much impact that it actually has, you know. And that's what prompted my question. You mentioned the ANPRM. I wasn't going to venture into this, but I'm curious, do you have any new information about what the FDA or anything is doing of the information they've collected so far? Any kind of an update by chance?
They are simply reviewing all of the comments filed. I believe the total was 560,000, but 250,000 or more of those are the same message repeated over and over again. Washington Examiner and Regulator Watch did stories on the fake bot comments from 4 different IP addresses. The FDA isn't going to delete those from the public comment database, but it's very likely they will disregard them. So generally, FDA has 3 different ANPRMs to review the submissions from, but they did say a week ago that they plan to review that expeditiously, or whatever fancy term they used. So it would not surprise me in the next 6 months to see, 6 to 8 months to see something from FDA. And our hope is that they've taken the evidence into consideration and will not be acting hastily.
And that was one thing I know that Brent Stafford from the Regulator Watch had done a large piece on that. And my curiosity question for that, just if you can address this, and if you can't, that's okay. Do you think that there's actually a chance that they will throw all the comments out claiming that it is tainted material?
No, I don't suspect that will happen for a variety of reasons.
Okay, and that's good because I keep getting a lot of questions from various people, different shops, things like that. People get in touch with me and they ask questions, and I try to answer them the best that I can. But that's been one of the biggest ones, has been if they're actually just going to throw all of that out or throw it under the bus. Greg, if you have a minute, I'm going to do our sponsorship thing here real quick, but when we come back, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more, if you have a few minutes, about getting in touch with government. Is that okay?
Sure.
Fantastic. Just going to put him on the side for just a second, and we are going to take a moment and talk about our sponsors, the wonderful people that take care of the Smoke-Free Radio Network and provide the phone lines. Again, we do have open phone lines. The number to call is 215-383-5752. Here's a word about our sponsors.
Hey now, this is Dimitri with Smoke Free Radio reminding you to please show some love to our wonderful sponsors. Without them, there would be no Smoke Free Radio, and they are as follows. All the way from Florida, Moon Mountain Vapor, with locations in Florida, and their liquid available for wholesale and retail, moonmountainvapor.com. Lovely Shell with a vapor bar, locations in Texas, Virginia, and West Virginia, and of course online at thevaporbar.com. And who says you can't have award-winning e-liquid without cartoon characters? That's exactly what you're going to get at theplumeroom.com. And finally, of course, the Vaping Advocate magazine that has generously provided the telephone lines for you to communicate with us. Thank you for your support. And finally, for you, the listener, don't forget to check out the coupons and codes page on Smoke Free Radio. Pick up some e-liquid and save some money. From all of us here at Smoke Free Radio, thank you for your continued support.
Here again, we're talking this evening with a special guest that has taken a lot of his time out, and it is Mr. Greg Conley, the president of the American Vaping Association. And again, Greg, I seriously appreciate you taking the time on such short notice to take time and do the show. You and I had chatted just for a minute, and we wanted to talk for a minute about getting in touch with local government officials, local people, and even state level. If you can you tell people how important that is going to be in the upcoming months?
Right now is a great time to try to meet with your elected officials, especially if you are in the vape business, if you have a vape shop, distributor, wholesaler. But even if you are simply someone who is passionate about vaping and wants to try to introduce the subject to your local legislator, the mere fact that a legislator voted the way you wanted them to on one issue 2 or 3 years ago does not mean that they are quote-unquote good on this issue. It's certainly not written in stone, but the general rule in state politics, I wouldn't even call it a rule, is that Republicans in state legislatures tend to be a bit more friendly towards vaping than Democrats. Well, depending on which poll you read, we are possibly heading towards a blue wave in November. So we have the potential in some states that have been flying below the radar the past few years to really be at risk of bad policies being enacted at the state level. And once a legislative session has started and bills are introduced, that is a terrible time to try to have 20, 30 minutes with an elected official, because they are juggling, by the time session starts, they are juggling 500 things in their day and may not have time to meet with virtually any constituents most days of the week, let alone someone they don't have a prior relationship with. So I'm going to be traveling at least one or two states in October and November, most likely, to try to arrange some meetings between both vape shop owners and legislators, and in districts that are important where we don't have a vape shop. I'm trying to organize some vapors themselves to do some meetings with important legislators. State legislators, especially when they're not in session, they are eager to meet people, especially small business owners. If you're just a passionate vapor, trying to get one or two others from your community that have quit with vaping to request something as a group, that can help. And I'm always willing to assist with people that are looking to do that.
And that's a big one, because that's something that I actually did not know, was that this time of year, especially coming up in November, was that important in the grand scheme of things. I've always known that it has been almost mandatory to be in touch with state, local government, senators, Congress, as much as possible, trying to forge relationships with them. But I didn't actually know that was this kind of important at this time of year.
Pretty much any time of year that they are not in session is a good time to try to get a meeting. And that's not to say that during the session you're never going to get a meeting, because I've helped dozens, if not hundreds, of vape shops and vape companies when they've been threatened to connect with their local legislators. But now is the time to forge those relationships, so you're just not the 18th person that's walked into the office asking for a vote on a bill in that particular day, and the 112th person that week to walk into the office. So forging those relationships now, and so they think of you, the small business person, the local group of vapors, that when they are pitched on supporting a bill, because once legislators have put their name on a bill, or they have already tacitly agreed to support a bill in committee, it is much, much harder to reach them and convince them to change their mind than if you influence them before they've had to stake out a position.
I would wholeheartedly definitely agree with that, hands down. There was a picture that you had on your Facebook page, and I remember when this had happened. You actually got an RV and went on tour across the United States to talk to people about vaping, and it was a vape tour, correct?
Yes, that was the largest one we've ever done. That was a joint effort between Americans for Tax Reform, CASA, ABA, SFATA, Not Blowing Smoke, and we had direct industry support from some great companies, Boosted and Cloud Chasers among them. I don't want to leave anybody off. I apologize. And then I've done significantly cheaper tours where I've gone to states like Mississippi and Montana and done road shows where in between I try and do local TV media and try and get vape companies to meet with their state legislators, sometimes go along with them to meetings. And I was hoping to do 2 states at the end of 2019, or rather 2018, but the need to do all these tax meetings and with the threats coming up may put a damper on that, but it'll be a tour nonetheless, because I'll be going to a lot of different states.
How was that received? I mean, how did people react when you came pulling up in this RV to talk to them about vaping?
Well, one of the coolest parts of the trip was driving the RV on the open road, and the vapors would drive by and blow big clouds out the window and put their mod out the window and shake it. I I did have one old man in somewhere in the middle of Colorado that told me that it was really bad for children. But aside from that one old man, the reaction was positive. And they were events that were set up with local vape shops. They were promoted through CASA, through our advocacy networks. And we had some real good crowds. Boise, Idaho was excellent, a great showing with a great group of people. And we started in Vegas, went all the way up through California, did the Pacific Northwest, and drove through Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, and ended up in Philadelphia. We ended it, the second to last stop was Philadelphia for the Philly premiere of A Billion Lives.
Holy mackerel. That's a lot of miles, man.
Yes, thankfully, they allowed me to drive the RV for a 60-mile stretch, probably, in South Dakota, where we were simply going straight. And then Alex Clark from CASA, I think, was terrified by the end of those 60 miles, so I was not asked to drive again.
Wow. Oh, looking at that one picture, and it kind of sparked something else in the back of my mind. As the AVA is one of the largest groups on a national level, do you find yourself able to work cohesively with other groups like SFATA or the VTA or things like that?
Yes. I've known Brittany Cushman, who handles a lot of the advocacy efforts for VTA, for years. SFATA, I helped start the original state chapters of SFATA, Delaware and Rhode Island, and one or two others in their early days, around 2012-ish. So one of the nice things about the advocacy side of this debate is that everybody works closely together and keep everybody in the loop. And that even extends to a lot of our THR supporters in public health who are glad to work together where appropriate.
Have you found that kind of cohesion has gotten better recently? I mean, we'll say over the last year. Has the capability to work politely, cohesively with other groups, has it become easier since the vaping industry has seen all of this garbage coming along? Have you found it easier to work with these other people and groups?
I've always found it easy to work with other groups because we are in a small niche at the AVA. We mostly focus on, at least publicly, being the voice in the media and going to help out in states. We run on fairly low budget for an organization with the media footprint that we have, so we're not a quote-unquote threat to any existing group. So whether it was a year ago, 2 years, 3 years, I think we've always been able to work together, and we always look for opportunities to co-sign letters, to fundraise together if we have projects where we align. So I'm always happy with the cooperation we've been able to get.
That's fantastic, because it is one of the things that I would hope, and I've been able to kind of see, is watching larger national groups and everybody kind of beginning to really form more of a united front instead of a fractured front that may have been seen by the public, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. In all the time...
Yeah, there is a...
Go ahead.
There is a perception out there that the groups are at each other's throats and dislike each other, but it's simply generally not true. We've all co-signed letters, worked together on projects. We sit next to each other at tariff hearings and talk about how miserable our lives are, and that is mostly a joke. So great relationships all around in my mind. I'm proud to work with the people from the national organizations.
And that's one thing that I try to educate people on when I go to talk to shops, or I talk to individuals or shop owners or anything like that. And they do mention that divisive nature that seems to have been a stigma in the public eye. And I try to tell them, no, this actually isn't true, or it is anywhere near as bad as what people might have heard. So to hear you be able to say, as the president of the AVA, that, hey, guys, we get along together. It's okay. We're not going to kill each other here. That's an amazing kind of thing for me. I really appreciate that. I'm going to ask real quick.
As I said,
go ahead.
No, go on. There was nothing important that I was going to say, so go on.
Okay. How long have you been with the AVA, and how long have you been the president of the American Vaping Association?
So I believe it's 4.5 years at AVA, and prior to that, for 3 years or so, I was the volunteer legislative director for CASA. So yesterday, August 8th, 2018, was 8 years of vaping for me, and I did not realize that I was on my quit date until I was doing an interview, face-to-face interview yesterday with the Philadelphia Inquirer for a little feature they're going to do on me, apparently. And he asked me when I quit. And when I said the date, I realized, oh, this is actually my quit date. So it's been a good 8 years, and never thought that this is where I would end up.
Wow. That's actually a very, very long period of time. In your time as president, up until now, and I would say up until maybe even a few months ago, what has been one of the most significant things that you have seen happen for, and I'm going to put it as either for or against the vaping industry? If we take out the PMTA stuff, if we put that aside, what's one of the things that you've really seen as the president that you would say ranks in the top three?
Undoubtedly, the work by public health authorities in England. Public Health England, Royal College of Physicians, Cancer Research UK, those groups coming aboard and telling the truth about vaping has been incredibly important in the fight to keep these products around. If a large country's public health department had not come out and spoke the truth about vaping, I think some regulatory situations would be different today. Even though oftentimes you have hostile legislators or policymakers or nonprofits that will discount RCP and Public Health England and such and act as if the lungs of smokers in the UK are different than the lungs of smokers in America. But the fact that we've been able to point to these respected, honorable organizations and say, look at this data, look at what they are saying, that has been very helpful. And just a couple months ago at the Global Forum on Nicotine in Poland, I was speaking, and they asked a question, what is something that you've been wrong about in your time doing vaping advocacy? And my answer was, well, when I first started in 2010, I was too optimistic. I thought, oh, if we just go in and we give the evidence to these public health groups, well, by golly, they're going to come on our side. They hate smoking. They want to end smoking, so of course they'll support vaping. But then that optimism turned to pessimism, where you think for a while, I'm going to fight like hell to save this, but ultimately these people are backwards. And I don't know if we have the time or the money or the resources to change enough minds. But then you had England come around. You've had people like Dr. David Abrams, formerly of the Truth Initiative, that have come on board this debate and speak to the media truthfully about this topic. So the change in perception of vaping within a certain segment of the public health community, while I wish it was much, much larger in number, the fact that they are there has been incredibly important for us.
I would agree that that has been one of the biggest things that I think I've ever seen were some of the documents coming out from Public Health of England, studies that they have done and reports that they've come out with. And it almost begs the question, why Phil Basardo, who works with Dimitri, he did a rant when they were chatting the other day, and he said, and the rant was basically that it's amazing that this is, a product that is 95% safer than smoking, and yet health organizations seem to be balking at what is really going on. And the FDA and American Cancer Society, many different people are balking at understanding or being open to seeing the truth of what these reports are saying. And it makes me wonder at times why that doesn't really come across to government officials. My question behind that, I'll put that aside, but my question is, when you have the capability to talk with senators, congressmen, people of that stature, have you found that their level of knowledge of the vaping industry may be low, or that they might be misinformed?
Almost universally. Even among our proponents at times, they say some things that are wild and off the wall and not entirely true. But especially among opponents of vaping, even the people that decide to make it their pet issue. One of the three things that they intend to get done in the 2018 year is vaping. They sometimes aren't even capable of memorizing one page of talking points that they're given by the Cancer Society or Heart Association. Occasionally, you do find ones that have studied the issue and simply look at it through an incorrect lens. They are not necessarily being intentionally hostile. They're not intentionally not looking at the information, but they're just wrong. So it all varies, but by and large, the legislators are not particularly knowledgeable. But in their defense, as a state legislator, you have 500 issues come before you in any given year, and that might be even keeping it low. And that's a good argument for state governments being very careful before putting their nose in things that they don't actually know about. So unfortunately, the vast majority know very, very little.
And again, at times I find it almost amazing. The people in the vaping industry that are paying attention, that know, they've been exposed to so many different things. How much safer it is, the pros and cons, the things that are much better about. And there are times that I think a lot of vapors forget that people that don't vape or have not been near the vaping community or don't know anybody that vapes, they really don't know some of the things that we know or that we take for granted. And then that definitely extends into government officials and things like that. Just real quick, I got this message from James Jarvis. He goes, Greg, I wanted to congratulate you on 8 years for vaping. He goes, I want to, and I've got to read this because it's way over here. Said, I want to thank Greg for helping with FIG and Naked Vape Tithing Program for his role in getting funds to the states. It was an awesome thing he did to ensure everyone was able to benefit from that program. That was from James Jarvis.
You're welcome, James. Vape tithing was something I was very proud of. We ended up in a situation where not all these state groups could legally handle incoming funds from random persons and companies in states that they may not be registered to accept money from. The law is a terrible thing sometimes. So our accountant told us that if we exceeded $500,000 in donations for the year, our disclosure rules and our accounting practices would get a bit more expensive and more time consuming. So we set a limit saying we could probably take in $250,000 easily without being at risk of going over that limit.
Wow.
And pretty much we raised, I think, $140,000 in a very short time span. And then Naked came in, and even though we did not hit, I believe it was $250 we were trying to get, Naked still stepped up and donated the full amount, which was amazing.
And I remember when that happened, that just blew my socks off. That was an amazing thing to see, a manufacturer coming through and a large company, that would take the time to actually care about the industry that they work and live in. I wish other large companies would do much the same thing. I know we all wish the same thing. One other question. You mentioned this earlier. Hitting a point of, I'm not going to say burnout, but it might be kind of close. How would you tell people that are advocating more on a local level or even on a state level, how might you tell them something that would help them boost their morale or keep them going in their advocacy?
It's a good question. I would say to remember that you're not just fighting for yourself. If vaping gets banned tomorrow, the people listening to this show will import from China, get big gallon jugs of nicotine and stick it in the back of their refrigerator or freezer. They'll be fine. But there are 36, 40 million smokers out there that deserve a choice like you've had for the past 8, 9 years. And our opponents, you need to look no further than Stefan Didak of Not Blowing Smoke just posted a video of clips from a Beverly Hills flavor ban hearing where we're essentially being compared to sniffing gasoline or whatever they claimed, and saying that this is not a cessation product that's just intended for kids. There was 25 people or so out there, including a couple anti-tobacco professors. They flew in from Northern California to be there. And this technology needs advocates in order to survive. So I don't know if that was a rousing speech that will get people who are burnt out to reinvigorate, but I can say that I've been doing it 8 years and still going strong.
That's awesome. That is a fantastic piece of news, and I know that there are a lot of people that they get out, they walk, they talk, they do the things that they can do and should do, and yet I run into that frustration level with an awful lot of them. It just kind of drives me up the wall. On a side note, and again, this is one of those touchy kinds of things, but we all know that it's coming along. The flavor ban, and especially the way that it is really raising hell in California, just so people can hear it and understand it from somebody besides myself or some of the other people. How big of a problem is this becoming across the states?
California, Massachusetts, and Minnesota are very much at risk. And eventually, I think New York counties will be as well. And then you'll start to see some other local states pop up. California can be the bellwether of the rest of the country. Other states will look and see what California does on this. And unfortunately, they're doing the same thing in California that they did with vaping bans. They are going city to city, county to county, and creating a patchwork of regulations so that they can go to state legislators and argue, we need a state law. And we are doing our best to delay and defeat any ban that we can. But it is difficult when the California Department of Public Health, and I need to independently confirm this, but I was told that their campaign that they are running, called Flavors Hook Kids, where there are billboards and bus advertisements everywhere in California, is supported by a $95 million grant over 3 years.
Good God.
So in just one state, in California, they have $30+ million per year to spend. And you could add up all the funding that VTA, ABA, SFATA, CASA, all those groups get over 1 year, and you do not even hit 10% spent. So that's what we're up against, where you have these public health groups in some of these states, California, Massachusetts, with more money than they know what to do with. And they're just going to keep pushing for prohibition after prohibition until they find something new to ban.
I'm going to ask what might be an obvious question, and I'm not directly sure if you can even answer or even come close to it. that kind of money has to come from somewhere, because the government in California, they're pushing pennies just like every other government. Every other state is having the same problem. Would you say that there is a concerted effort by any particular large organization to basically stamp out or mitigate vaping as much as possible?
Sure. Tobacco-Free Kids, the American Lung Association, American Cancer Society, regardless of what their 501c3's little policy statements say, the American Heart Association, the Academy of Pediatrics. You can go down a list of probably 60 different organizations that may not all be spending money to try to destroy vaping, but they will gladly sign on to any anti-vaping proposition that crosses their desks.
And I'll ask the follow-up right behind that. Why would they do that when they see that this is a safer product than combustible tobacco?
Dr. Michael Siegel of Boston University School of Public Health, a longtime advocate for harm reduction, he summed it up pretty nicely as saying it's a combination of ideology, prestige, and money. And to put it briefly, ideology, it looks like smoking. Prestige, these groups get nice awards. They get treated like benevolent public health warriors. And for them to admit that maybe they were wrong after 8-9 years of fear-mongering about these products, that can be difficult. And then money. It's only a couple people that truly matter in the world of tobacco control, in the world of anti-vaping. Matt Myers of Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is probably the most important. All of these groups, especially cancer, heart, lung, they're 501c4, the ones that lobby. Their groups essentially allow Matt Myers of Tobacco-Free Kids to set their tobacco policies. And anyone at that organization, American Lung, Heart, Cancer, the 501c4s, that wants to change their position on vaping, well, good luck keeping your job if you are trying to go against what Matt Myers is saying.
And I'm glad that you said that in just the fashion that you did, because it is on everybody's mind where this is really coming from or the reasons why. And it was part of the rain. I didn't want to ask too much of a leading question. I'm glad you did that, because even as Phil Bissardo had said, that it comes down to money. And his quote was, imagine if they had a cure for cancer, how many hospitals would have to shut down almost immediately, and how many grants and funding that would just be eradicated. As me as a liquid manufacturer, but also a vapor, it makes me sick to think that these people are doing this for no other reason than money. They're saying people's lives, the people that smoke, their life is worth X amount of dollars per year for them to keep their job.
Well, by and large, ideology and prestige drives anti-vaping fanatics far more than money. Money can cause people to be silent and go along with the wishes of misinformed people. And it can certainly lead researchers to look at, hey, if the FDA is giving us $10 million for research and the FDA wants to ban flavors, well, then maybe our research should support that position, and we should phrase our research in a way that shows that we tacitly support flavor regulation. But by and large, it's not just one big corrupt cabal of people counting their dollars and laughing as people die of lung cancer. It's mostly misinformed people that are too ideologically predisposed to hate these products, to reform themselves.
And that's one of the, you're right, wholeheartedly, because if you look, people may not have seen it. England has turned around and they put up banners and signs very much advocating for people, if they want to stop smoking, that they try vaping as their cessation, to quit. Here's a tool, here's a product that can help you quit effectively. And from all the things that I've ever read, vaping has a much better chance, capability, prolonged everything over other things like patches and gum and whatnot. And you see this being done in England, and you see all these signs popping up in different places of the world that support vaping. And yet when you get back here to the United States, we have flavor bans and God knows what else, and the FDA and regulations, and it's enough to make anybody sick.
I didn't disagree with a single thing you said.
Well, Greg, if you would, tell me one other quick thing, and we'll get ready and wrap our time up together here. How can people either get in touch with, join, or become part of the American Vaping Association?
Sure. Our website is vaping.org, nice and simple. And we are on Facebook and Twitter, and in theory, we're on Instagram, but I don't think there's been a post in quite a while. And join our email list, donate if you can, ask some others to donate if you can. But continuing to be vaping advocates is the most important thing, and very hopeful that we will still be around and helping smokers quit 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
I agree. I certainly hope that we have the capability to be around. We've got the 4-year extension, and even though Senator Durbin is going to try to shoot that apart, I'm hoping he doesn't have much success in that, but so far we've got 4 years, and we're going to try to make the best of it. Again, folks, this is an evening spent with Greg Conley, and he's the president of the American Vaping Association, and as he mentioned, please take the time, go sign up, become part of the American Vaping Association. Greg, just real quick, is there a cost to that, or is that just something that people can sign up for?
No, you can simply sign up. We sign up, join. We don't necessarily think of ourselves as a member-based organization because we don't want to compete with CASA. The first step for any vapor who wants to stay informed on vaping is certainly going to be CASA, but a second step, come support the AVA as well.
That is fantastic. Greg, I certainly appreciate your time this evening, especially, like I said, on a last-minute thing. I needed people to hear from a person of authority, yourself, what was happening with tariffs and some of the other things we're able to touch on. I hope that you have a great evening, and I'm going to try and catch up with you again here soon.
Thank you.
Have a great night now.
You too. And then one last thing, you can all catch me if you happen to be awake at 9 a.m. or so on Monday morning. I will be on China's English Broadcast News Network, the state-run American news network based out of China, talking about the Trump tariffs. And that's going to be quite the experience. But I will be live from a TV studio in a foreign country. I will be on the TV at 9 a.m. on Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern, and I put up a link on my personal Facebook page, and it will be on AVA's as well.
Oh, fantastic. I would very much like to tune in and check that out, and I hope everybody else will as well. That would be some very interesting information, without a doubt. All right,
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you being on the show this evening. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Greg Conley. Have a great night, sir.
You too.
Folks, it's Greg Conley, the American Vaping Association president. And it is an ironic thing that you're able to hear what's going on with tariff. It's no longer just something that is on the sideline. This is something that is going to impact everybody. Everybody. And this is just kind of like the first wave. There's more that is supposedly going to be coming behind this. Right now, it's like mods and hardware. Mods, really. And by the sounds of it, the next step is going to be coils and Lord knows what else comes out of China. And it's going to have some serious impact. So the biggest thing that you can do, get in touch with your state groups. Get in touch with the American Vaping Association, the AVA. Get in touch with the VTA. Get in touch with CASA. Get in touch with your groups that is going to give you some better information so that you're better armed to be able to get out there and do something about this. It's becoming some very, very scary material. At any rate, everybody, I seriously appreciate you taking the time. And again, for Greg to take the time on such short notice to be able to come and join me on Vaping in the Mic and give us some very firsthand look at things. But next week we've got a little bit of an oddity. There is a shop in Vancouver, Canada, that we're going to be talking to next week. And there's something special that this gentleman does, and I want to be able to have him explain what he's doing in his shop. But that'll be next week on Vaping in the Mic, 7 p.m. here on the Smoke Free Radio Network. Until next week, everybody, I hope you have a great night and a great weekend.